talking to myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it's Tuesday night, and I know it's a fan's favourite, this one. Liam Kennedy from the Shields Gazette joins us. Hi Liam, you okay, mate?
You all right? Yeah, you've got me smiling there with that little promo when I seen your three amigos for The Hangover.
The Hangover, that's this week's post. That's like a sneak preview for people. But yeah, people wait. People are more in anticipation, I think, of the poster than they are the show on a Friday night. But it's always a good one. It's always a good one. The designer loves playing around with me, Steve, and Neil, and occasionally Ian Mearns gets it chuck in as well, which is great. So, but great to have you on, mate. As always, there's always a queue to watch this program, which obviously we're always thankful to the viewers and everyone who tunes in. Really means a lot. Darren Baldwin Funerals, though, big shout out to him tonight. As always, he's busy sending us a new graphic over to stick on the screens. But for now, there's his little plug. He's sponsored us for this month. He's chucked a little bit of money into the pot to keep the show going, which is great. Much appreciated. And also a special shout out to my mate at Q-Tech, who has not only obviously taken out a sponsorship last month, qtech.co.uk, who do pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, but he's also sent us this, a t-shirt, which I got today, and it's got NUFC Matters there, but you can see it up the top. Now, on the back, I could do a spin round. I'll do it tomorrow, but he's actually got his logo on the back with Steve 100% Wraith on. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciated. And I know you're watching tonight. So big thank you to you as well. And the book, I'm sure I'll enjoy reading. Stephen Hendry's autobiography. Obviously, you can imagine he's got some good connections in the in the snooker and pool world, and we're looking at doing an event, hopefully one day, with some Newcastle United players and some world snooker players up in the northeast. That's what planned. So we're going to do that as a co-joined event between us and Q-Tech. But enough of me whittering on. I know people are keen to hear what you've got to say. Loads of questions coming, some great questions as well. We're just looking through them there before we came on air. First of all, you've spoken to Steve Bruce today. You actually had an online press conference with Brucey. You got to ask him a few questions, mate. So take us through that interview process today, mate, and what you got out of Steve.
Well, I'm just going to say this first. I didn't get a Brucey bonus. There was no freebies from Steve Bruce. Like I didn't get one of his books, one of his children's books from the 90s at all, or anything like that.
No, never mind. You know, I'll see whether we can get you another T-shirt. He might knock a Liam Kennedy T-shirt up, so it depends how good you are the night, I suppose.
That'll be my best behaviour. No, Steve Bruce today. Got a chance to speak to him this morning. Bit of talk about transfers, a lot of talk about the Carabao Cup, a lot of talk about his mistakes for the weekend. Held his hands up was the first thing that I would notice from the press conference. He admitted that he made a mistake in his team selection, admitted that he made a mistake in his formation, tried to change it during the game. It's good to see him hold his hands up and say he got it wrong, but I think it was quite naive of him in the first place to play the style, personnel and formation that he did. I can see why he did it, but I think you would find more tactically astute managers would have changed it, more of a horses for courses approach, go physical against West Ham, go at them, change it against the passing side, who, let's be honest, all we have to do is roll back to last season, the home game. I think we were both there. Brighton absolutely passed Newcastle off the park. The only difference in the two games were Newcastle didn't hand any goals on a silver platter like they did this weekend with a penalty in the second one in particular as well. So he was quite reflective on selections and formations. He said for this Morecambe game, in spite of picking the wrong team, he is going to make changes. He made 10 changes for the game last week. He's going to make changes again. I suspect it'll probably be something similar. Little hints that he might play Andy Carroll up front. May not be Joe Linton, but there could also be a place for Joe Linton in that side. I think we're going to see, like we did last time, the likes of Jacob Murphy get some time. Emil Kraft, Mark Gillespie will start again. Kieran Clark. We're going to see a lot of those players come into the side and change things up. I mean, let's be honest. We're playing a League Two side. It should be enough. There shouldn't be any players in the Newcastle United squad who shouldn't be able to play against a League Two side. So whoever is put out there really should be able to see Newcastle through. Like I say, a lot of reflection on that. On the transfer front, I asked him about a couple of things. I also asked him about the re-emergence of Mike Ashley. Everybody will have noticed that Mike Ashley's been at both Premier League games. Whatever your view on that might be, is there anything deeper to that? Maybe we could discuss that. But I genuinely think he's starting to make himself appear as a public face of Newcastle and to show that he cares. And I don't necessarily think that's a sign to the supporters. I think there might be a little bit. I think there might be a little bit more to that, because obviously, as we can see in the picture, we know what he thinks of the fans. So yeah, I asked him about that. That's classic. That's classic.
I cannot help myself.
What happened, right? We've all been there. We've all been in situations like that.
I took the photos.
I was just out shot in the back, I think. No, so yeah, he was very positive about it. The re-emergence of Mike Ashley. He'd rather have an owner that was interested, because let's be honest, Mike Ashley showed absolutely no interest in Newcastle United last season or the season before. He didn't even bother turning up to games. So we've seen him twice already this season. On the transfer front, which is probably what a lot of people out there are waiting to hear, I asked him with regards incomings, is it a case of that they have to trim the squad? And he was he was unequivocal in his answering of that. He was talking very much about having to not collect players, as in he can't keep bringing players in without getting rid. They've got rid of 2. They've got rid of Lejeune and Muto, and I think there's probably going to have to be at least another 2 or 3 before they really consider doing some more business. They are in the market. They are looking for players. I've said this on here before. Whether they pay money for players is another thing altogether. I do think they're looking at loan deals primarily, given that they've already spent very much, basically the full budget as we believe it to be already this summer. Newcastle's business is largely done. I don't anticipate we're going to see a massively busy few weeks, but it could become busy if you see a DeAndre Yedlin depart, if you see others, because there's lots of players in around the fringes. Henri Saives, I would expect Dan Barlaser. He'll probably end up going back to the Championship. There's a lot of Championship clubs interested in him, but it's just going to have to be a little bit of trimming of the fat around the edges of this Newcastle United squad before we really see any significant adding to the ranks. Again, we know what they want. Whether what they want is what we need is another thing altogether. They are looking for a centre half. I think they're woefully lacking in midfield, but that's just my take on things. I thought that was pretty obvious from the Brighton game. I know there's a lot of Isaac Hayden fans out there. There's not so many John Joe Shelby fans out there, but Newcastle United have been trying to replace those players in those central midfield positions. I've said it till I'm blue in the face on here. Since 2017, they've been trying to replace these players. There's a reason for that. It's because they don't consistently control or grab hold of Premier League football games. I like Isaac Hayden. I am a fan of his, but I think he's got his limitations. I'm also in certain games a fan of John Joe Shelby, but he's got severe limitations, as well as being a slightly better player than Hayden. And I think Newcastle United are really lacking there. I thought there was a slight. They seem to get a foothold in the second half when Jeff Hendrick moved into the middle. I would like to see Jeff Hendrick get a little game there, a few games in the centre. I think he really could make a difference. I said that at the start of the season. He'd be my selection alongside Hayden or alongside Shelby. I would definitely find a place for Hendrick because he's a very busy player, and I think we're finding that. He's not always affecting things at one end or the other, but he's a constant presence in that midfield, and he's able to come and get the ball off the centre half. He's also able to put a clever ball in somewhere in and around the box. I think he's got a little bit of everything, which I don't think either of those two midfielders Newcastle have in there at present have got. I think he's got something they haven't. So Bruce talked a little bit about that, and I think he's obviously, we all know they need a striker. If he's going to persist with this system, he has to change personnel in the forward positions, because Andy Carroll, I like Andy Carroll, I'm a massive fan, but I think he's definitely got severe limitations. His legs just won't carry him anymore, and I think he's an ideal plan B or plan C to any Premier League side. But when you're actually wanting him to be a plan A, it's quite painful to watch him sometimes trying to catch up with play. And that's not for a want of trying. He's full of effort, and you can see his heart's in it, and he's a fantastic character around the place. You can see why Bruce wants to be loyal to Andy Carroll because he's a real character in the dressing room, a real voice. But there's got to come a point where Bruce looks at it and says, yes, of course, I didn't give you the games that you wanted last season. You were knocking down my door to come and play, but are you really my plan A in the Premier League regularly against sides who are quick, nimble, really move the ball quickly like Brighton did? Carroll totally looks lost in that kind of game. I think there's things he could do to that team. Bruce admitted it today that he got the personnel and he got the system wrong. I think Alan St. Mac. I think you've got 4 in that midfield that they've had. You're playing 2 of that 4 out of position. You're effectively playing Jeff Hendrick as a centre midfielder out on the right, and Alan St. Maximin isn't an archetypal winger. He's not the winger that will tuck in and cover his fullback. He's effectively a wide forward. And I know people might think, well, what's the difference? But there's a big difference in these players. And I think if he's going to persist with this system, you're better off putting Alan St. Maximin up front with Callum Wilson, because then he's not going to have to do the tracking in. I thought it made Jamal Lewis look a really bad player. I think it was worked out quite quickly. You had Trossard, you had Maupay, who both wide pulled the fullbacks in and just made Newcastle so narrow, which they set up narrow anyway, and it made them even more narrow and just allowed the width down the side. And we're not talking about one of the great minds of English football here. We're talking about Graham Potter, who I think has done a fantastic job there, and I think he is a good tactician. But we're talking about Brighton side who finished below Newcastle last season. We're talking about a Brighton side who could well still finish below Newcastle this season. They're not world beaters, and they've absolutely done Steve Bruce and Newcastle for 2 seasons now. It's not rocket science to see that if you just keep putting the same team out constantly and being loyal to players, it's not going to come out with the same results. There has to be a horses for courses approach, and I think that's Bruce. To be fair, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. He did say today that he knew he got it wrong. And I would like to see him come out and make changes. I don't want to see him. I would play Andy Carroll personally. I would play him tomorrow because I think this is an Andy Carroll game. It's ideally playing against League 2 opposition. He's got the ability to go in there and absolutely bully defenders, and that'd be fantastic for him. And he might get on the score sheet. You play Tottenham on Sunday. Andy Carroll's not playing for me. You've got to have a little bit more than that. You've got to have a Miguel Almiron in there who can buzz around, or you've just got to change the system and be a lot more tactically astute in a game like that. And it was good to hear him today almost realise that. I thought he realised that he'd made mistakes, and that was good to hear, because quite often we've been in positions with Newcastle United managers who've often blamed everything but themselves, and it was actually quite refreshing here today to hear that. No, you're not a Bruce fan. I'm not Steve Bruce's biggest fan. I like him as a person. Do I rate him professionally? Not really. I think that the facts tell you that he isn't really a very good top division manager. But we've got him, and it would be nice to see him just switch on tactically a little bit. Can he do that? Can you do that at the age that he is? Pushing 60. I think he's 60 this year. Is he yesterday's man? He probably was yesterday's man 10 years ago when he was Sunderland manager. But I think there's little changes that he can make. That it doesn't take a rocket scientist to really just switch a team around and make them hard to beat, which Newcastle United aren't. Under Bruce, Newcastle United have not been hard to beat.
It's difficult when your plan A is Andy Carroll and Callum Wilson, and your plan B is Joe Linton and Callum Wilson, and unfortunately, that isn't much of a change, is it? And, I think you're right. I think it's a great suggestion playing Callum Wilson and Alan St. Maximin, or even, Almiron, just somebody with a bit of pace. I think the biggest disappointment for me was that, he ruined all the good work of week 1 with a poor team selection. Fair play. He's held his hands up. He's admitted he was wrong. Let's hope, he gets it right tomorrow and then gets it right as best he can against Tottenham. So, but it's the Newcastle United job. It's, we know what it's all about. And, Twitter's a small, it's a small reflection of the way certain part of the fan base, feels. It's not a general reflection, but, the knives were out for Bruce within a week of getting a great result down at West Ham. I saw a lot of people call him for his head. A lot of people calling him a dinosaur. And as I say, for me, I've come in with a bit of a different attitude this season. And he's not the man for the job, but history suggests that this is what we're used to, Liam. This is the likes of Sir Bobby Robson, Keegan, and Rafa, like we were discussing on the phone today, aren't the norm. Kevin Keegan's football was a blip, really. And Newcastle United, often attract this type of coach, manager, whatever you want to call them. Our history books show that.
Yeah, you just have to look back over the history managers that Newcastle have had, going back to the 70s. They've attracted this kind of manager. And to be honest, Steve Bruce, sometimes the way that Newcastle United play wouldn't be out of place in the 1980s, in the 1990s. I think football's moved on so much. And I'm not going to call them a dinosaur, because I think it's within anybody's ability to move with the times. It's within anybody's ability to adapt and to change. And that doesn't make you less of a manager for doing that. I think he's a very good man manager. I think he got the players on side last season. Will we see, is it second season syndrome? Will we see the cracks really start to show this season? I'm not sure, because we've got, I think Bruce last season proved himself to be a very lucky manager. They got results when they never looked like getting results. Somehow come out of wins with games when you wouldn't have expected it. And I suspect it's probably going to be something similar this season. And I think the benefit of this season is they've got a better group of players. They've actually got a proper centre forward. They've actually got a proper left back. Whether he's a left back and a forward is another thing altogether. They've signed a couple of really astute midfielders, probably the best 2 free transfers in our category that you could have found in the Premier League. I think Ryan Fraser will be a very, very good player for Newcastle, and I still believe Jeff Hendrick will be a very, very good player for Newcastle United. But scratch the surface of that, 2 or 3 of those get injured, then you're relying on the same team of last season, and there are severe limitations in a lot of these players. Joe Linton is painful to watch. It really is. We've all played sport at any kind of level, and it's a confidence thing. It always has been and always will be. If you're playing any kind of sport, even if it's just messing around with your mates, if you're full of confidence, things go your way. You'll try things, they'll come off. If your confidence is absolutely shot and you're not fancying it, then things don't come off. That's one of the key pillars of sport. It is the nature of it. And I think we're finding with Joe Linton that he looks like a beaten man. I think that game, the home game last week, Blackburn, he really did look. And I don't think he's just not putting it in. I think he is, but I think he's lost all appetite and hunger. I think he looks like a fish out of water, and you can't tell me that he's as bad as he was. I didn't see a lot of him from German football. I'm not really a massive German football, Italian football, Spanish football. Some people out there might be able to come on and say they are and say he's brilliant, but I don't really watch other leagues. I just watch this league. And what we've seen, you can't tell me he was this bad. Somebody must have seen something in him to spend this kind of money. Yes, he's not reflective of that value, of course, but he scored the odd goal in Germany. He was a regular under a very, very good manager. At a decent side, he performed really well in Germany. So you can't tell me he's as bad as he's looked here. I just think, for me, with squad numbers being so tight, if I was Steve Bruce now, I'll be using the final 2.5 weeks of this window to get him out the door. I don't mean permanently. I would just be putting my arm around his shoulder and saying, right, I see every day around training. I see you run out on that park. He might be different in training. He might be full of beans, running about, happy. And then when he runs out on that park, it might drain from him. And the manager should see that. Just put your arm on the shoulder and say, right, I'm going to let you go. Go away. Just go and learn to love football again. Go and score some goals, have some fun. Go to Turkey. There's clubs in Turkey you want, Fenerbahce or one that would take him on loan. Go there for a season. And if you're Bruce, then that frees up a section in your squad where you can bring in a striker who's going to fit if you want to play 2 up front, who's going to play with Callum Wilson. If you want to play 1 who really push him, and then you've got Andy Carroll as a plan B, plan C in a game. I think it's a no-brainer. I don't see the point in keeping Joe Linton on board, who is basically just going through the motions. And he's probably Joe Linton in a lot of ways, as Bruce is in some sense. We talked a little bit today about crowds and crowds not being there, but I think it would have been painful on Sunday, really painful. I was talking on the phone with my dad earlier on, and we were discussing this because he's a season ticket holder, and he was saying that imagine if Newcastle were playing as they were at St James's, and then Joe Linton comes up off the bench. Imagine how toxic that would have been. And I tend to agree with that as well, because it wasn't just getting beat 2-0 or whatever when he came on. It was the manner. It was absolutely outplayed. We made Brighton look like Barcelona. We really did. It was embarrassing. And I think if Steve Bruce would have been getting pelters, then all of a sudden he pulls Joe Linton off the bench, I think it would have been absolutely toxic at St James's. So I think it's probably a good thing for Joe Linton and Steve Bruce at the moment that there isn't a crowd there at St James's Park.
Yeah, under 23s in action tonight in the EFL Trophy, and it's Shrewsbury 2, Newcastle 0 at the moment. We'll keep an eye on that scoreline. Big thanks to Anthony Amers and to West Cumbrian Mag, who both joined up as YouTube channel members. Thanks very much. Just a little donation towards the channel. Thank you very much for that. Got plenty of questions coming in. Apologies that I've missed a few of the earlier ones because obviously me and Liam do tend to chew the fat when he comes on, because especially with him meeting Steve Bruce today, it's important. So I've lost Mad Mag Mark's early questions, but we did luckily read them early on. Now, can you remember, Liam, what the gist of his question about the money that was spent, etc., by Newcastle, etc.? Can you remember that? And Just a little response to Mad Mark's question, really.
Off the top of my head, he was talking about the 35 million that had been spent this summer, and the 120 million that came in TV money, etc. I think when discussing finance, we only see and we can only analyse what we're given in terms of accounts. We know accountants are very clever. I think we all know that Mike Ashley's had his fair share of money out of this football club in the 13 years that he's been the owner. But on what we're given, the club basically wipes its own nose. It looks after itself. So within any money that comes through the doors at Newcastle, which again it has been severely affected. It will be severely affected in the future when the club are finally going to have to pull their fingers out the backside and start giving people their money back for this season. People are going to be paid up for their season tickets this season in March. So that's going to severely affect, if we're not going to get into football grounds this season, which is a definite possibility, the club's going to have their income reduced even further. But Newcastle United only spend what comes in. Mike Ashley doesn't put any money in. Does he take money out? It certainly doesn't look that way when you look at the accounts. But we all know that there is a bit of clever accounting probably that goes on with regards to that. I think the thing that when you analyse it is that a lot of clubs are supplemented by their owners who care about the football club, and that's the problem with Mike Ashley and Newcastle United. It's been a problem since a year into his tenure that he just doesn't care about Newcastle United. He doesn't care about Newcastle United, what we feel about Newcastle United, and that's the problem. So any money that comes in, the club looks after itself. The wages are paid out of it, any fees, everything comes out of that same pot. So you can see, when you see the kind of money that Newcastle United are paying out to players like John Joe Shelby on 80, 90 grand, similar with Joe Linton and others. Callum Wilson's probably on more than that. It's pretty easy to see when you're shelling out that. Say Callum Wilson, I don't know for certain, but he was on 100 grand at Bournemouth. If Callum Wilson's on 100 grand a week here, that's nearly £500,000 a month out just to one player. So you can see where the money goes quite quickly. So I'm not about to sit here and say, like, where's the money gone? We can only deal with it, the facts that are put in front of us, and whether it's clever accounting or not, the money gets spent within the football club. But a lot of football clubs speculate to accumulate. So a lot of clubs will spend on future incomes. A lot will spend just through owners who put their own hand in their pocket, and we haven't had that with Mike Ashley for a long time, unless he's had to put his hand in his pocket because of his own poor decision making and poor people that he trusted to run his football club.
Yeah, a lot of people talking about Hayden and Shelvey. Alan's asking, do you think Hayden and Shelvey are good enough to win the Premier? If not, why are they at Newcastle? Gothmog's Pyjamas says Hayden and Shelvey need improving. Yeah, we have recently extended both of their contracts. Paul says, for me, when we have new players, new contracts, they seem to go backwards. Hayden's been rubbish the past two league games. Rafa Benitez, as God says, told you Bruce would play Hendricks on the right, Liam.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting...
Yeah,
it's square pegs and round holes. It's almost as if he's trying to keep everybody happy. And I think the point you made to me on the phone this morning when we were talking was that, Andy Carroll's good around the squad. He's been, it's quite clear on some of the videos that the players have put out that he's the man to go to for, the social aspect and bedding in and settling in. This is Newcastle. Welcome to Newcastle. And, like Clarkey and Watto probably did back in the day in the 90s. But, that's not the reason to start him, is it? I mean, his legs aren't what they were. He was never particularly fast. But essentially his legs are shot now, aren't they? And he's running around like an old man. And like I said last season, and I know he didn't like it because he took me to task when we bumped into each other in the town. That I said it was a publicity stunt. It was a publicity signing, and suits him, suits the club. He shouldn't be starting Premier League games. He should be an impact player, really, someone who comes on and changes things.
I'm not sure it was definitely a publicity stunt. I think it definitely worked out that way. My stance on it was, I think it was, there are connections, which I'll not go in too much about, but there are definitely family connections with regards to Carroll and Ashley, business connections within his family. And I think there was something which sort of smoothed the deal through. I'm not saying there was any wrongdoing or anything. I don't want to give too many details away, but I think it was more a case of will you sign him up? There is some kind of business relationship from someone within Carroll's family and someone and Mike Ashley as well. So yeah, that was why I think there was a part of that. The player wanted to come back. Steve Bruce, when he was offered, the player was taking him in a heartbeat, and I think we all bought into it as well. And I think Carroll looks fitter now than he did last season, but there's a big issue, and then that even if a fully fit Andy Carroll is still some way off what he was when we last seen him, even some way off when he was playing at his best at West Ham. He scored a lot of goals for West Ham. We kind of hide that, but I think the injuries have just really got the better of him. I would say that he is still a good plan B, and I think Andy Carroll, if he can stay fit, is a fantastic plan B for Newcastle because he defends well in his own box. He really gets stuck in the opposition box for good delivery. But I think in open play, I think he's shown up a little bit just by that lack of legs. I think it's like I've said 2 or 3 times now, it's a horses for courses. You can play Andy Carroll against Sheffield United, for example. Against Sheffield United, he was excellent last season. A physical side, he can really bully defenders. You can play him against Morecambe in League 2. They'll be really scared of playing up against somebody like Andy Carroll. But I just think in certain games he'll get shown up. And I think one of those was Saturday. Really, he was so ill-suited to being on the pitch in that formation. And I felt sorry for Callum Wilson, I'll be honest with you. That first half an hour, he literally he never got a sniff. And there was nobody anywhere near him. Carroll couldn't keep up with him, wasn't anywhere close to him. Carroll won his fair share of flicks, but it only takes you so far. Only really, and I think Carroll's got a time and a place, but it clearly wasn't on Sunday.
Paul Oxley's wanting to know if we'd take Eddie Howe. I would say no. I wouldn't take Eddie Howe at this moment in time. Would you?
No, I haven't heard. I'll be honest, I haven't heard great things about Eddie Howe from people who've come into contact with him. I know people who've dealt with him while he was at Burnley. I know people who dealt with him while it was Bournemouth, and I think he's a good bloke and all that kind of thing. But I don't think he's. I think he's got his massive limitations, and I think should he take another job, we might well find out that he turns into like a Gary Monk or somebody like that who just dots around lots of clubs. I think Bournemouth was the club for him. He did an unbelievable job there, but bringing somebody like that here would be a real issue. I think there are managers out there that you could take a look at and say, well, would you fancy them? I think one that would be a really controversial one would be, would you take a Sean Dyche for Burnley? Steve, would you take somebody like that instead of Bruce?
Mm-hmm. I mean, to be honest, under Mike Ashley, it has to be somebody who can work under the restrictions. So, you know, Sean Dyche can work under restrictions, but you know, you run the risk of replacing managers as quickly as Sunderland did, which led to them being relegated not once but twice. And you know, that's my concern, really. You know, if you keep changing managers, you end up with dribs and drabs of players from previous managerial regimes. You end up with, you know, an unhappy camp. You know, but look, with the recent, you know, the news today about COVID, and you know, we're not going to have fans back in the ground now, I would say, until next season. You know, some of these clubs aren't going to survive. We're going through strange times, and you know, I really don't know. You know, I really don't know what kind of state our football club's going to be in. Some football clubs won't exist. But our football club, I'm not sure what state it'll be in. Somebody asking about the takeover. Would it affect the takeover? I mean, at the moment, the takeover is the last of our worries, but it'll be Mike Ashley's worry because, you know, as each game and each week and each month and each year goes by without fans in the ground, he's losing money. And that price of that club is going down and down and down. And, you know, this takeover, which I believe is still there, are they going to pay? Are they going to pay £330 million for a club which, you know, isn't making as much money as it used to? I'd very much doubt it. So, interesting times, mate. We're living in interesting times. I don't want to dwell on the takeover. It's pointless at the moment. We've got to concentrate on the here and now, the football. And you know, a lot of people criticising Bruce as expected. You know, after one game, you know, one defeat, the knives are out. I find it, you know, George Culkin got a bit of stick today on Twitter, didn't he? I didn't see the article. Was it an article or a headline that he put out? Something about, you know, it was almost as if the headline was having a pop at the fans. But when you read the article, George wasn't having a pop at the fans. He was just being realistic, I think.
Yeah, I've not read the piece, but I did see the criticism, and I seen him having to quite quickly jump on people saying, "Look, this isn't about Newcastle, and it's meant to be a joke." I've seen him saying that quite often to fans out there. It just seems like maybe the piece was taken wrong. This happens. Emotions are running high. Everybody's gone from a point of real positivity, I think.
Yeah.
Could say there was a fortnight where things felt like Newcastle United again. Things started really moving in the right direction, the way we want them to. And then all it takes is a really poor performance against Blackburn, which is scraped again, one of those lucky Bruce kind of results. And then all of a sudden, a really, really terrible performance. I've struggled. If I wasn't working, I would have turned that off. Honestly, 15 minutes in, I would have turned it off. I was absolutely sick watching that because it was literally could have been any score. Really could have been any score. If Brighton had carried on the way they were. Newcastle United's players looked all at 6s and 7s, and there was no. The one thing that worried me was not only was there no leadership from the bench in those early stages. I kind of want some. There's a lot of experienced characters on that pitch. I want some leadership from on the pitch. That's a type of thing where there's we've all played sport. It's a type of thing where you have to rally round. You want somebody shouting and bawling and pulling people around with you. And there didn't really seem to be that. It was moseying around. I think the only passion we've seen in the first 10 to 15 minutes was John Joe Shelby had a little kick out at somebody, which I don't mind seeing because that's frustration. And you want to see a little bit of that. Come on, get a hold of the game. And I think that falls on the captain. It falls on the experienced players. There wasn't really a lot of that, and I think that's probably a little bit of a concern moving forward. If the chips are down, then is there really going to be that leadership on the park? Because we probably know we're struggling for tactical nous and leadership off it.
Stu, thanks for changing your name, mate. I must admit, I didn't have any issues with it, but I do know a few people watching did have issues with your previous name. But thanks, mate, and thanks for all your comments. You've been a big supporter of the show, so thanks. He says, let's be honest, there's a large section of our fan base Bruce will probably never win over. It is true. Richard Anderson's probably one. He says, sorry, Liam, but I've never been positive about Bruce. Bravo is talking about some real issue here. When am I going to grow the beard again? It's there. There's a goat.
I'm back.
Back again.
Okay, I've
In-
lost Steve.
Internet problems. Internet problems at my end. Can you hear us, mate?
You're in. Yeah, you're back.
Can you hear us, Liam?
Yeah, it's normally me with the internet problems.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Big shout out to Virgin again. An absolute shambles from Virgin. It is a bit of a nightmare. Like I had to do the live broadcast. I think I told you the other night from my phone, basically. So yeah, absolute nightmare. But I am back, so at least the show was still going without us, mate. And Wraith froze. It was as soon as somebody asked about me beard. That's when the problems all started. Like so, Liam's reaction was priceless. By irony.
The comments, they're like,
SP says he gets his internet.
I was
brilliant.
Like,
love watching Liam's face when Steve Bruce was like, crap, what do I do now? Brilliant. Masters again, says Trulls. Can't see SB getting sacked whilst the potential takeover hangs over. Yeah, the whole thing with Steve Bruce is, for me, is he's an Ashley type of manager, isn't he? And that's it.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, he is. It's that kind of appointment is really like archetypal of Mike Ashley, the Mike Ashley era. Your Alan Pardew's, your Joe Kinnears, even your Chris Hutons and things like that. They're not exactly inspiring appointments, and that's kind of what we expect from Mike Ashley. He isn't an owner that's ever inspired at this football club. I think things could have been different had certain things gone his way. The Keegan thing not happened. Had he not even appointed Kevin Keegan the second time round, I think things could have went differently for Mike Ashley. We might not be in this position, but that's making excuses for him and that's giving him outballs. And I don't particularly want to do that because I don't particularly like him because he's totally spoilt my football club.
Yeah, 100%. David Little says, can Liam explain how the UK media hasn't mentioned the Nasser Al Khalifa trial and the clear corruption involved? Yeah, well, we had an earlier question about that, but again, lost the trail of the show because we were too busy talking. But yeah, what's your take on that? They just don't seem to have picked up on it, have they?
No. There hasn't been a massive amount of coverage. I think there's been coverage by the nationals. There's also been coverage by your likes of BBC, Sky Sports, not massively because there isn't really a huge English-British angle on it. And I think a lot of people are reading a lot into it because they're obviously the Qatar links, the beIN Sports links, but there isn't a massive English-British angle on it apart from that. And I think obviously it's easy for us to say that because we're so invested in this, but it's also easy to forget that we do live in a bit of a bubble, and obviously we're massively invested in this. And anything negative that can sort of add to our cause is something that we're going to jump on. But not everybody's in that mindset, and I think it's easy to sort of get stuck in a rut and think and be really critical of everybody around you. But there isn't a massive interest in it, and nationally. But there has been coverage. I've seen Sky Sports News have put stuff out there, and I've read things on the BBC. So there has been some coverage. I don't believe the narrative that everybody's ignoring it because that's just not the case.
Yeah, I would agree. Not NUFC related, but will league games still be okay to go ahead with the restrictions? I was at South Shields at the weekend and was safe as houses in a great game, says Damien.
Look, fans being in football stadiums is the absolute lifeblood of the non-league scene in the Northeast. It's even the lifeblood of the football league as well. The margins there are so much shorter. It doesn't matter the Premier League football clubs whether fans can get in or not really, because as long as they're run reasonably well, there's enough money coming in from TVs, TV deals, etc., to not really have to worry about that commercial revenue in some sense. But the non-league scene is the absolute lifeblood. They need fans coming in. They need a fan buying a program. They need a fan buying a pint, a pie, staying for a couple of hours, having their lunch at the clubhouse as you can at South Shields. They need that. They're not going to survive. There's going to be clubs all over the place will not survive another full lockdown. And my bugbear with this lockdown idea is that it's an outdoor sport. We're not talking about something where we're all locking ourselves in a room, especially non-league grounds. You can reduce the capacity, as I seen there was around 600 at South Shields at the weekend. you can reduce a capacity and keep people reasonably socially distanced. They're outside, they're not in an enclosed space. The risk of spreading will be less if as long as you're within a safe distance of people around you. There's enough room at places like South Shields. I'll keep using the example because it was mentioned. There's enough space there that you could do that. It's the same at other grounds. You'll find that yourself at Dunstan. You could have fans through the ground, into the ground, who would be able to spend a little bit of money and just keep things ticking over until we can really push on and have fans back as we all wanted. But I just think we're going to have to accept for a reasonable period of time that football isn't going to be football as we know it. I think we all hoped and prayed with a reasonable return to normality over the summer that things would push in the right direction and we could get everybody back this season. I think recent developments, we still don't know how things are going to develop, but I think it's fair to assume that might be a struggle, that we might struggle to see anybody in Premier League football grounds. But I think it is imperative that non-league clubs in particular, if football is to continue being played, are allowed to have fans through the door, because without that, these clubs will die. Even with that, in a reduced capacity, some clubs will die. There's no getting around that, because not all of them are well run. A lot of them will really, really rely on it, on money coming in. I'm talking more into the Football League here, and I think it's got to continue. If you're going to allow people to go and sit in a pub, if you're going to allow people, even if it's just till 10 o'clock at night, if you're going to allow people to go and sit in the cinema, which is an enclosed space, and they may well sit there for the length of time that you would at a football match. If you're going to allow people to go and sit in a restaurant, again, you could sit there in a restaurant. If you're going to have 3 courses, you'd be there 2.5 hours, 3 hours, you might be there with a drink. If you're going to allow people to do that, then you've got to allow them to go to football games. I also believe a total lockdown would be so damaging to the mental health of the country. I think a lot of people rely on that outball that they have at the end of the week, which is going to a football game. Even if it's not going to be the same, even if you're not standing or sitting where you used to, or you're miles away, just the idea of really going there and just seeing lads kicking a ball out on the park, it'll just be that little release that you might need at the end of the week. And I think it's really important that we keep that as part of our culture during this lockdown.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of points coming in. Apologies for my picture. I hope the sound's okay. Just obviously the internet's dipped out again. Nothing I can do. Luckily, got me hotspot on my phone, believe it or not, having to rely on that. But yeah, I'll be putting in for a little refund from Virgin, I think, after their appalling service over the last 48 hours. But yeah, hopefully you can still hear us. A lot of people saying that you're talking a lot of sense, Liam, which is great.
Not many people do that.
Yeah. I do want to ask you a little bit about Black Lives Matter, mate, and taking the knee, because it has been in the news this week. And the girls, I thought, made their points quite eloquently last night on Ladies' Night. You can catch up with that on the channel if you didn't see it. But yeah, Queen's Park Rangers really was the story that I caught. They played Nottingham Forest in the previous game, and Nottingham Forest players hadn't took the knee. So the Queen's Park Rangers players at the next game chose not to take the knee. Nobody took the knee. Now, I just want to know what your thoughts on this are. Is there a directive, from the Premier League this year to say that we have to still take the knee? Because, it's very important. It's something which has to be highlighted. I've got no complaints with that, but now we seem to be having a little issue, between the message getting across by some teams and not others. I haven't seen it happen in a Premier League game yet, apart from Newcastle's, where they forgot. I think there was a general forgetting of doing it, and then it got done. But what's your take on that, Liam?
I think it's quite sad that it's become an issue. I think it was a worthwhile thing to do. I know a lot of people get triggered by the idea of it, but it's something that I'm fully behind, the cause itself. Is it becoming a gimmick, was the idea that was suggested by QPR? Are these just words and not actions? And I think, yes, there is a suggestion it could be that. Is this just a run-of-the-mill thing that's going to become, so we do it because we've always done it? Yeah, maybe it has lost a little bit of its impact, because this taking of the knee was a very, very was an iconic thing done by Colin Kaepernick over in the NFL. Really had a big impact on US sport. And I think, is it something that is being cheapened by the constant to and fro and, oh, well, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it? Possibly. It is possibly. I would, if I was a player and people within my team wanted to do that, then I would be more than happy to take the knee with them. If they didn't want to do that, then I think we would all stand together. I think it's something that Steve Bruce discussed today. It was something that he talked about, given the decision to Jamal Lewis. I don't believe there is a directive. Listening to Steve Bruce talk about it today, I don't believe there's a forced idea from the Premier League that you must do this. I think it's just a player decision. And he talked today about Jamal Lewis having that call. And he said it's a conversation that he's had on numerous occasions with him, and it's something that Newcastle United players have continued to do. Is it something they'll probably continue to do indefinitely? Who knows? I doubt it, because I think you're already starting to see a little kickback from certain clubs and certain people in sport. It happened in F1, it's happened in other sports where some do, some don't, and that's quite sad in a way that it's something that was meant to be a positive, an enactment of change, a recognition of wrongs, has turned into something that's quite divisive. I don't have a problem with it. Some people do. It's something that I support. And ultimately, I think it's genuinely down to individuals, whether you want to support that as well. But like I say, I can only say, what would I do in the same position? And if my teammates wanted to do that, I would be more than happy to do that with them. If we made a collective decision that we wouldn't, I'll be quite happy to do that as well. But I do see the point. Les Ferdinand, again, you talk about eloquent. Les Ferdinand was fantastic with his statement yesterday. And there really is a case that the actions speak louder than words. It's not just about these gimmicks, about saying you care, about saying you want change. It's about actual inaction of change. And there's been so little of that in football, in a sense, because we've seen foreign FAs fined nominal amounts for racist abuse from the stands. And you really think, in the year that we are now, in the diverse culture and diverse society and education that we have in the present day, that people that this kind of thing wouldn't go on, but it continues to go on, and it's quite sad in a way. But that's the world that we live in. I think education is the thing that can only ever change the root of this. And I think the more that people educate themselves about these issues, then you get more of an understanding, and you can see from other people's eyes, because the root of the cause that we're talking about here, the Black Lives Matter movement, really is a worthwhile one.
Yeah. Liam, it's getting a bit dodgy, mate. I'm going to quickly pause proceedings. I'm going to try and swap back to my original Wi-Fi to see whether I can rectify it. So bear with us, viewers. Give us 2 minutes, and we'll try and.
Oh no, he's left us again. I'm going to have to say something now, because you'll all be in these comments saying that that I'm like a rabbit in the headlights. But no, it'd be good to see what you guys out there think with regard to the Black Lives Matter movement. Is it something that you agree? Do you agree with what I said? Would it be something that you would do? It'd be really good to see you guys come in and have your thoughts as well, because at Newcastle, it's been something that has been put with the players. It was something that everybody decided to do last season, but it's really a player decision this time. So it'd be good to see what you guys would think in the comments.
I'm back again, mate, but I'm afraid the last 10 minutes could be a little bit of a nightmare, because you're really slow. I can't really hear what you're saying. I'm pretty sure everything's okay with the viewers, and they can hear you. So maybe you could just carry on by yourself. But I'm living in a world of suspended animation and slow conversation. It's very difficult to keep up with you. But if you want to continue, Liam, I'll just go off. I'll come back in 10 minutes and shut the show down.
Just ask us a question. I'll chat away for 10 minutes. It'll be fine.
Yeah, apparently I look better blurred. Somebody said, which is great. So yeah, listen. Apologies tonight, guys. It's the internet's an absolute nightmare. Certainly going to have to get something sorted. Rob Bennett, I think he did say he would help us out and try and get upload to a different upload channel or something like that. We'll have a look at it anyway and see what happens. Anyway, we're going to just a quick look ahead to the cup game tomorrow, mate. Obviously, you've already said you don't feel that well, there's going to be changes. Did he give any indication of who he's going to give a run out tomorrow? Did you say Yedlin might play tomorrow?
Yeah, he's definitely said DeAndre Yedlin will play. I said this last week. It could have been his last game. I think it could easily be his last game this time. Depends if they get through. I think we'll probably see him next week if they do manage to get through to Newport or Watford. Elsewhere, Mark Gillespie will definitely play in the game. I thought he was fantastic last week. I thought he was really, really good. His distribution, his confidence with crosses was absolutely fantastic. I think Javier Manquillo might well play again. I think we'll definitely see a lot of changes. But Kieran Clark needs minutes. Will play. Matt Ritchie will almost certainly play. Sean Longstaff's an interesting one. Will he come in? Will he not? Dan Barlaser will probably play. Joe Linton's a one that's up in the air. Is he someone that he will throw in? Will he not? I suspect Andy Carroll might play. He only got the 45 minutes, and I think he had intentions on playing him last week against Blackburn, but obviously that plan changed quite late on, and he played Joe Linton instead when Andy Carroll had to pull out of the squad because of the birth of another one of his kids. So I think Andy Carroll could start, and I think it'd be an ideal game for him as well, because I think he's got the real ability to go out and bully teams, especially at that level. Ryan Fraser's an interesting one. Didn't ask him today. Should have probably asked him. Didn't. But Ryan Fraser's an interesting one. Having got 60 minutes under his belt, will he throw him in again? I think again it's an ideal game for him to get some minutes under his belt. Jacob Murphy could be another player that plays. Christian Atsu's unlikely, not through injury, but I suspect that if Newcastle United can shift him out the door, then that'll probably be the end of Christian Atsu at Newcastle United. But yeah, I think with regards changes that there will be a lot. And I think Steve Bruce is quite confident in the fact that he feels he's got a really strong squad. I know that might sound daft to everybody out there, but let's be honest, it is a stronger squad than he had at his disposal last season. But I'll go by one comment that he said today, which might interest fans out there, and it was with regards priorities. He talked a lot about prioritising a cup, and it almost, his comments today jarred a little bit with me, because the way I'm looking at it is Newcastle United have got a good draw, and Steve Bruce must know in his own head he's got a limited amount of time as Newcastle United manager, a club that he says he cares about, and that's in his heart. So you would think he would really want to attack this, but we talk a little bit about damage limitation and making sure that Newcastle United came out of this with not too many injuries and things like that, which to me is a little bit of a worry and concern, because he should genuinely be attacking this, really go for this competition, because before you know it, if you beat Morecambe and then you go through and beat a Watford or you beat a Newport, you could be talking about the competition reconvening again in January or February or whatever it may be, and you're in a quarter-final of a competition without really having to push yourself so much. I think Newcastle United chances to win things are very rare at this football club in the model that we have, and I think Steve Bruce should really be taking advantage of the fact that he's got a good chance in this competition of going reasonably far without really having to extend themselves too much. And I found his comments today a little bit jarring that he wasn't prioritising the cup competition, because, like I say, he's only going to get a limited amount of opportunities to really have a go in a cup competition. It's something that he prioritised last season. I see the comment there that somebody's come on saying, any update on the injury situation of Alan St. Maximin? I'll start with St. Maximin before we go on to Dummett. Alan St. Maximin has an ankle twist. He got a scan, checked it out, and it's not too serious. No real damage to the ankle, which is a big plus. And I think when you look at it, did he injure himself? Was he badly injured? He wasn't badly injured, but he had a really rough game played out of position, got really turned over by a fantastic fullback that Brighton have got themselves in Lamptey. Was absolutely fantastic on Sunday, and I think it wasn't the game for St Maximin. We'll see him again on Sunday. I think we probably will. Paul Dummett is a different kettle of fish, essentially. So Paul Dummett is a player that hasn't kicked the ball really in anger since the start of the calendar year. He wasn't named in the squad in the second half of the season because of his injury. Only really recovered in pre-season, and I think from then it's probably going to have to take a little bit of time to be eased back into playing, because he hasn't got a lot of football under his belt. Essentially, I do think we will see him at some point. Next week could be a one for him. Fabian Shaw sounds like he's very, very close. Now, that definitely could be one that if Newcastle get through, I think we will see next week, because he isn't at contact yet. But I think that he is somebody that once he gets back to contact, because it wasn't a football injury, essentially, it wasn't legs, it was a dislocation of the shoulder. I do think we probably will see him back sooner rather than later. Elsewhere on the injury front, Jamal Lewis is a big boost, because there was a lot of fears after the game on Sunday that Newcastle United would he'd be out for some time and have some serious damage to his eye. That isn't the case. He's just got a really big shiner. Steve Bruce says he's got a cut above his eye, and that eye is totally closed. It's one of those. It's Tuesday night. It may well have the swelling and bruising may well have abated by the weekend. So I would suspect we'll probably see him involved. He's had his stitches, and there's no damage to his eye, so he'll be okay. Thanks for the support there. Keep it up. 5 minutes to go. What's the timer? It's only 3.5 now. I'm doing all right. I've seen somebody there talking about Kieran Clark. Kieran Clark, I'm a massive fan of. I think he's a proper Premier League defender. Does all the dirty stuff, does all the stuff you need from a centre half. Massive fan of him. Really good fan. So yeah, he's somebody that I probably would give the captain's armband to tomorrow when he plays. And yeah, I think he's somebody that should be tied down to a new contract, because he's a type of defender you can build a defence around. And I think he plays really well with Lascelles. He plays really well with Fernandez as well, and that shows he's a good defender. So yeah, keep the comments coming in. I'll try and comment on as much as I can. I'm seeing somebody saying anything on Brewster. That looks like it's a done deal for Crystal Palace. There is a lot of interest from Sheffield United that has been all the way through this, but whether they'll match the kind of fee that Liverpool are wanting. I think Newcastle's interest primarily came when Brewster looked like he would be a loan deal. He isn't going to be a loan deal now. They want to sell him permanently. And I also think in some ways that kind of puts the blocks on any kind of Divock Origi deal at Liverpool. So we'll see how that one pans out. Should change the Liam show? No, I don't want the show. Steve is absolutely fantastic at what he does. His internet's just crap. Can't do anything about that at the moment, but we'll keep going. I'm seeing more people saying make Clark or Richie captain. Richie is a player that obviously he's wore the armband before. He's somebody that will continue at Newcastle United. His head was turned a little bit earlier this summer, and he's somebody that isn't quite at the top of his game. He's lost a little bit in the last couple of years in my eyes. I think sometimes it's end of attack when it comes to Matt Ritchie, but I do think he's got a good left foot, can deliver fantastically. And yeah, I think he's somebody that they'll definitely play tomorrow, and as another option for an armband, because he's a leader on the park. Gabriel Obertan, what a horrendous player he was. He was awful. I've seen somebody saying, yeah, any news on Tammy Abraham? What's that one? Wilson, Brewster. I would still have signed Callum Wilson. I think he's. I said this at the start of the summer. He was a player that I really, really wanted to sign at Newcastle. A fantastic player, and somebody that really Newcastle should play to his strengths. They're not playing to his strengths at the moment, and I think it was quite sad to see him perform the way he did at the weekend, because he ploughed a lone furrow up front, and it was really painful to watch him run around up front by himself with absolutely little to no support. He got that one chance where he headed over the top, but really you want him having 3 and 4 chances a game, and he'll get you a couple of goals. But yeah, we'll see. Tammy Abraham's another one people are linking in the comments. I don't know the situation. To be brutally honest with you, I don't know the situation at Chelsea. They do have a lot of forwards. Tammy Abraham's somebody that they really pinned the hopes on last season, and he did fantastically well, to be honest, leading the line as a young lad. And I think he's somebody that Rafa Benitez thought he'd signed. It didn't come off. He really thought he had him, so much so he got to meet him. He would have been a fantastic player for Newcastle United, but things just didn't quite work out. Yeah, Steve's internet's just like the tune. Slow labour, then eventually just goes missing. Keep the comments coming in. I'll keep trying to answer. I'm just seeing somebody saying that, yeah, I'm in injury time. Yeah, Steve probably has gone to the pub. I hope he's got his pint in at the table. Well, separate tables during lockdown anyway. Yeah, injury time. We'll keep going for another minute or two, and I'll have to call it a day. It's getting quite dark here, isn't it? I think I should have turned the light on. Could left back Gibson sort of return. He recently signed a new contract. He was a player that Newcastle United looked to bring in January, but he signed a new contract, and it's somebody that the club would like to see come back. But I don't envisage that's one that will happen in the near future. Yeah, keep the comments coming in. I'm just trying to look through all the bits and bobs that you're saying here, and a lot of stick going towards Steve for leaving us here. Have you been to Morecambe before? I haven't been to Morecambe recently, but I have been to it used to be called the Globe Arena. I've been there a couple of times for games. Decent little ground for the size of the club that they are. A new setup, but I don't envisage that Newcastle United will have any problems tomorrow. No matter what team they put out, if you like I said before, if you're a player that is probably going to be in a 25-man Premier League squad at Newcastle United, you should have no problems at all. No matter if you haven't played a lot of games, to be thrown in against a League Two side and have any kind of issues. Someone's asking, would I play Callum Wilson tomorrow? Yes. If it was down to me purely, I'd want to see a striker. A striker wants to be playing, a striker wants to score goals. So yes, I would play him, but I think you'd probably play Andy Carroll. Are you back, Steve?
No, I'm not back. I'm just coming on to say we've got to go because you've done well. I was there. I could post some comments. I managed to get the comments on screen. So well done, mate. And I know that John Justice Allen is going to sort you a T-shirt out. Liam the Truth Kennedy. So you've got a T-shirt out of it anyway, mate. Listen, brilliant. Thanks to everybody for sticking with the show. Much appreciated. And Liam did a sterling job there. I know you've got to go off and write up Steve Bruce's press conference. But as always, a great show, very informative. And as you can tell by the comments, people loved it. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with the internet sorted. I'm going off now to ring Virgin. We will be back tomorrow night with Super Mac and Gibbo at 6 o'clock till 7, and then Match Day Live at 7 o'clock. So Liam, from me and Liam, good night, God bless. Cheers, Liam, mate.
See you.